This video will show the assembly of an Ender 3 3D printer. First, the unboxing. The product came well packaged. Of course, it was shipped by Amazon, so quick delivery. No problems with any damage or anything like that. It came with excellent instructions. It started with the Quick Start Guide, which is a printed guide, and that'll give you most of what you need. But there's also a pretty detailed install instruction on the SD card that's included. So that'll give you a little bit more detail on if you need any help with what screws are placed where or anything like that. All the parts are pretty good. They're heavy duty. Most of them are made out of aluminum or metal. The base is pretty heavy and a little bit awkward to get out since you don't really want to grab the main table. But once you get it out, there's a whole another layer down below, and that's got a lot of parts. And it does come with all the tools you need to assemble it, so that's excellent. Also comes with a scraper, so that once you get it going, you'll be able to remove your pieces easily. Does come with enough, a little bit of filament, but not even enough to do the test print. So you'll need to make sure you've got some filament. So while you're reading the instructions, you might go on Amazon or wherever and purchase some. There's a little bit of assembly required, but like I said, the instructions were pretty good. It took me about an hour to read the instructions, and then about another hour and a half to do the assembly. And I'll show you all the steps of the assembly here in the video. Most of it's sped up, but I'll tell you where I ran into a couple of problems, and that way you can see maybe those will be challenges you can avoid. And now it's time to go off and read the instructions. The base comes pre-assembled, so pretty easy to get that out of the box. One of the little pegs for the leveling table fell off, but that was easy to just slide back on. None of the springs popped off or anything like that. That's the power supply. With the power supply, you will want to make sure and set it to the appropriate voltage. If you're in the US, it's the 110, 115. Elsewhere, just check your local electrical guidelines. The control panel comes in a nice ESD bag, so I'd leave it in there until you're ready to assemble it. That way you don't accidentally give a shock to the control board or anything. And everything is pretty heavy and metal, so you might want to put down something soft to work on, something to protect your table or your work surface. And it includes an SD card, and that SD card is actually attached to a USB key. So you have a little thumb drive with the SD card, and so you can plug it into your computer and start reading your manuals. And like I said, it comes with really detailed manuals and also a pretty good little video on how to do the assembly. So I would definitely encourage you to watch those. Like I said, it took about an hour to do that, and then about an hour and a half to do the assembly. I went ahead and laid out all the parts. I did them step by step so that I could easily know which screws I was going to need for each step. The instructions are excellent. They tell you exactly which screws to go on each step. Also, it includes all the tools you need. Step 1 is grab the two big giant vertical bars and attach them. This one's a little bit complicated, not complicated, but a little bit tricky, because you have to screw the screws in the bottom and you don't want to lay it on the bed. You don't want to damage the bed, get it out of level. So I went ahead and put the unit up on two little boxes. Just make sure your boxes are the same size. And then you'll have to get down underneath and try to find those little keys, but luckily they're hex key bolts, so once you find the hole, it's pretty easy to get those screwed in. Next, we'll install the control panel and the power supply. And again, like I said, make sure you switch the power supply to the right setting for your region. Power supply is easy to put in, just two bolts, and then two more bolts for the control panel. Next, you install the Z-stop. I didn't get this on video, but basically you just set the Z-stop to wherever the bed's going to be, and that sets the 0 spot for where the arm will stop. Next, you install the screw and the Z motor, and then you assemble the horizontal part here. This one was a little tricky, because you look at the rollers and you think you're going to put the rollers attached to this bar, but actually those rollers are for the horizontal bars, for the vertical bars. So this bar actually attaches behind the rollers, and there's two holes that you just put the screws through one hole, and you use the hex key to screw those in through the other hole. Next, you connect the actual printer motor, and then you put the end cap on there. And next is the belt. Just make sure the teeth for the belt are facing in so that they grab the motor. It's a little bit tricky getting the belt put in. You do have to roll over it with the rollers. That way it goes inside that little track and is protected from the rollers after that. And then you just thread it around the motor and you put it into two slots on the actual extruder. And again, the instructions are excellent, so just follow the instructions. They'll show you all this. Although it doesn't tell you which way to put the teeth on the belt, so just put the teeth towards the inside and they'll grab that motor. And then at this point it just kind of sits loose, because the next step is to install the tensioning arm. And so this is a tensioning arm. You just install this to the end of the frame, put a little bit of tension on the belt, and then screw it in place. Make sure the belt is nice and tight. Next, you assemble this, take this whole assembly and put it up on top of the unit and screw it through the threaded bar. And there's some little screws on either side just in case it doesn't go down the bar smoothly, but you can just loosen those and tighten them back up. Next, you put the top on the frame. Now assemble the spool holder. It's pretty easy. Just put the spool holder on there. The only thing is you got to make sure you've got your orientation correct. So check that. The instructions are pretty clear on how the orientation should be. Next, you attach that to the top of the frame. And now to connect the cables. The cables are well labeled. They all have little labels on them, and there's a diagram in the quick start guide that shows you where those are, where each labeled cable connects. There was one little cable that was a little tricky. I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been the extruder, not the extruder cable. Probably one of these X-axis cables. It goes off inside a little compartment, and I ended up having to get some help from my daughter to get in there because it needed little bitty fingers. But the rest of the cables are keyed and labeled, so it all goes together pretty easily. And I did see where you can print some cable clips, so that's probably going to be one of my first prints, is to print those cable clips to keep those cables out of the way and looking a little bit better. And the nice thing is all these cables are keyed, so they'll only go in one way. Makes it nice and easy to just slide them in there. And the only challenge was this one cable up top. And like I said, you could probably get it with a pair of needle nose pliers pretty easy. Luckily I had Emily handy, so she was able to just pop it in there. And that's it. Now it's ready to print. I did run into one little problem with the printing, and that was that the stepper motor for the feeding the filament didn't work to begin with, but a quick reboot of the unit fixed that right away.